Neighbor kept blocking my driveway, so I gave him a taste of his own medicine, by user good 1387. So this has been driving me insane for like 3 months now. My neighbor parks his massive truck just enough over the edge of my driveway that I can technically still get out, but I have to do this ridiculous multi-point turn every single morning. I've asked him about it twice. First time he was like, oh my bad, but then kept doing it. Second time he literally just goes, there's still enough room though, and walked back inside. Like, dude, come on. Anyway, last Tuesday I see him outside doing yard work and his truck is in its usual spot. So I parked my car directly behind it in the street, not blocking his driveway or anything illegal, just making it so he'd have to do some weird maneuvers to back out. Sure enough, 20 minutes later there's knocking on my door. He's all annoyed asking me to move my car. I just smiled real big and said, I mean, there's still room, you just gotta do a few extra turns to get out. The look on his face, LMAO. He hasn't parked anywhere near my driveway since. Try to drive me out of my rental house? How does getting your rent doubled and getting fired sound? By user peppersteak_headshot. Years ago, I rented a duplex from a very nice owner. He was honest and reasonable. I put a healthy security deposit down and moved in. Unfortunately, he was not my day-to-day contact. That was the delightful and charming Giselle. She was the on-site landlord. I found out later that she was a tenant who the owner made an arrangement with. In return for cutting her rent in half, a sweet gig, she collected and deposited the rental checks, arranged repairs, and handled any other day-to-day things. The neighborhood had about 5 duplexes owned by this man. Giselle hated me from day one. And what's more, she lived in the other half of the duplex. You know, all the nightmare petty landlord stuff you see on this sub? Giselle ticked off all the boxes, Hoa-style Karen obsessed with the rules, yelled at my friends for parking an inch over on her side of the duplex, my phone or doorbell rang if my place wasn't stone quiet a minute after quiet time, rental checks I dropped in the same mail slot I always did somehow got lost, appliances and things not fixed in anything resembling a timely manner, etc. etc. It was more annoying than awful. I told myself I could live with it, as I was going to be moving closer to my job after my lease ran out. Later, I found out why she hates me. She had wanted a friend of hers to move into the duplex I got. But the owner said no because her credit check was awful and mine was sparkling. So, she just wanted to make my life miserable out of pure spite. As the end of the lease drew closer, I noticed my water heater was leaking. I dried the floor around it and then put some towels down. Then I emailed Giselle. I had wised up and started a digital trail by then. No response. A week later, I re-forwarded the email with a friendly, you may have missed this, but this could be a real problem. No response. Another email with, I had a friend who is a plumber look at it and he recommended immediately. Finally she responded with, I will look into it, and nothing else. She was just trying to run the clock out on me. It had been about a month now, and I was just a few weeks away from moving out. I saw Giselle watering her flowers and approached her and mentioned it. She blew me off but finished the convo with a threat, I hope you're keeping it clean around there. I'm a stickler when it comes to the final inspection. If you want to get any of your deposit back, you better be ready to pass a white glove inspection. Okay then. That's how we're going to play it. Fine. I was trying to figure out how I would get petty revenge. About a week later, right before my last rent check was due, I happened to see the owner in the neighborhood. Giselle was nowhere to be found. And that's when it struck me how I could make all this work. I went out to say hello and tell him thanks for renting to me, that I appreciated that. He was very friendly, said he was sorry I was leaving, etc., and if I needed anything to let him know. Checkmate. I asked him if he had a few minutes to come in and do the security deposit inspection. He said sure, and we went into my place together. As we were walking around looking at things, he was all positive. Yup, looks great. Yup, no issues there. Then we came to the water heater. I paused dramatically and gravely said, I hope we can come to some kind of understanding about the floor around the water heater. I opened the closet doors and showed him. I told him what I'd been doing to fight the leak. I pulled up the sopping wet towels I had put down the night before, and I told him I have had experience with mold and that it was nasty stuff. He got quiet and said, have you told Giselle about this? Why yes, I did, and here are copies of the emails I sent to her. He read them and then noticed I had kept them in a file folder. He looked at me and said, are there other things that haven't been fixed? I showed him a few other emails I had collected. He got beet red in the face and said okay. I think with what I have seen I'm fine with releasing your full security deposit. In that moment it struck me. I had one more rent check due, $750. How about instead of me writing you a check for $750 and you writing me a check for $500, I just write you a check for $250 and call it even. He shrugged and said sure. He signed the paperwork and then left. A few days later I dropped my check for $250 in the mail slot. Later that evening Giselle pounded on my door, foaming at the mouth about how I didn't write a full check. She can get me evicted if I don't write a check for the full amount right freaking now. I explained, conveniently omitting that the owner had done the inspection, that $750 less my security deposit of $500 was the $250. Giselle's eyes widened as her brain tried to comprehend what I had said. She nearly exploded, yelling at me about that's not how things are done and you have to obey the rules like everyone else and she has final say because she does the inspections. Friends, she literally had spittle flying out of her mouth, she was so enraged. I calmly told her that the owner had done the inspection and signed off on the payment arrangement and told her to talk to him. And to get off my porch and quit bothering me. And I very slowly closed the door on her. Again, her brain froze, and she went into lockdown trying to process what I had just said. That was an image I'll remember forever. Before I moved out the owner came by to ask if he could come in and fix the water heater for the next tenant. I said sure. As he was working, we talked a little and he mentioned that his daughter was moving into my place, and that she was going to take over the on-site landlord duties. I asked about Giselle. The owner simply said she's going to be moving out. She decided she couldn't afford to pay the full rent anymore. Father-in-law punched me below the belt, so I bricked his switch, by user Hervey. So, to start off I actually have a great relationship with my father-in-law. We have a lot of the same hobbies, actively hang out and he knows I was the one to do this to him and he found it hilarious. The situation happened back in December of 2021, me being with my wife's family for the holidays and quickly them all getting drunk. Since I'm usually the DD I didn't drink since I was gonna have to drive out of the middle of Philly. But as the night went on, I was playfully joking around with my wife and her sister arguing something stupid like the best thing to do in a game and honestly just rage baiting my wife like a good husband. Her father, completely drunk, came over and laughed as I rage baited her and told her, "Here's how you deal with your husband," and punched me in the dick. Obviously he didn't punch me full force, but I'm sure most guys here know even a light hit can be enough to make you keel over. As the night went on, he even apologized and offered me to punch him back, but I said no, but I was obviously gonna get him back. A month later, Pokemon Legends Arceus came out and me and her entire family got it, Phil also getting it and loving the game. But I beat the game much faster than all of them and having hunted shiny Pokemon for years, carried some of them over, my favorite being a shiny Giratina I had. Amazingly, before it became public knowledge as far as I knew, I figured out that if specifically a shiny Giratina used Shadow Sneak, it would just crash your whole Switch and force you to have to fully shut it down and restart the device. Cue petty revenge. A little while later we are all hanging out at sister-in-law house, playing Pokemon, and I nonchalantly offered all of them various shiny Pokemon that I hunted through the years, claiming I had a lot. I didn't, but didn't want him being too suspicious, and knowing her tastes I knew immediately he would love to have a shiny Giratina. So I traded it to him and just waited long enough that I kinda just forgot. Then months later when we were all hanging out he was complaining that his Switch kept crashing, he had to restart it, uninstalled and reinstalled all of his games, but it just kept crashing when he was playing Arceus and no matter what he did it wouldn't work. So I had asked him, "Oh, is it whenever you used Shadow Sneak with that Giratina I gave you?" He went silent, then I immediately followed up with, "That's for punching me in the D***ck in December." He couldn't stop laughing, as he said in his own words, "Oh my god, I wasted real time on that." I respect the long con. It was even funnier when a few days later articles started popping up for him about that glitch in Arceus well after he found out from me. Everyone in the family agreed it was pretty effing funny. Mildly inconveniencing wedding guest who wants to fuck my fiancé, by user me secret dumpster fire. Edit, typos galore. This is petty and stupid. I would have liked to think I'm a bigger person than this, but it seems it's not the case. Guess I'm in the right place to share my little confession. I, early 30s F, am marrying my fiancé this week, early 30s M. He's the most wonderful and amazing person in the universe, but he's also extremely oblivious, socially awkward, probably on the autism spectrum. Boy just cannot pick a hint. He works with a relatively small group of people, and they get along great. They usually go for after-office drinks one Friday a month. Since we moved across the country a couple years ago, we haven't made a lot of new friends, so basically these co-workers are currently my fiancé's closest group of friends. There's one girl in this group, let's call her Daisy, late 30s, who has an evident massive crush on my fiancé. I must say, I don't blame her. My fiancé is in tech and makes good money, wicked smart, tall, hot, nice, funny, interesting, and sweet. She has great taste in men. I've been part of a few of their get-togethers, and this woman acts like a teen girl with him. She giggles and literally twirls her hair, whenever she laughs she puts her hand on his arm, once even his knee, always tries to sit right next to him, etc. When I pointed it out, he said he hadn't realized, then made a face like gross and said I'll make sure to sit away from her. Before anyone does the Reddit thing, no, he's not cheating on me, or into her, or secretly encouraging it. We both work from home, we spend all day together, every day, I have full access to his phone, accounts, am friends with some of the other people who join those monthly after-office drinks, they've never met without several other people joining, etc. My fiancé is also extremely loyal, he doesn't do the typical things of following random women on IG, he's always talking about me, he's not a fuckboy, he doesn't like attention, doesn't like strangers touching him, I actually saw him lean away when she sat next to him, and straight up jerk away when she touched his knee. Additionally, he adores me. I even feel silly having to justify his loyalty, but I know how Reddit is. This man bakes me cookies and brushes my hair when I'm sad. He's a saint. Anyways. Our wedding is very soon. It'll be a small, intimate thing, only 35 people or so. We have a few gluten-intolerant guests, including Daisy, so we're doing cake for everyone, and special gluten-free cupcakes for these guests. We found a very nice boutique bakery that makes super tasty and safe gluten-free cupcakes. Literally the best in the province, one of my gluten-intolerant friends said. One of our guests has proper celiacs, and she needs it to be like one molecule and I end up in the hospital levels of safe, so we're getting all cupcakes for our gluten-free guests there. This place, however, only has 2 cupcake flavors, chocolate or caramel. We asked each guest which flavor they'd prefer, and they all said chocolate, except for Daisy, who asked for caramel. She doesn't like chocolate, and never eats it. I know she's not allergic/intolerant, I checked and got a list of all her allergies when we confirmed her meal for our joint bachelor/bachelorette party. I was about to place the order, when I received a text. Long story short, I found out that Daisy was planning on wearing white to the wedding, and her +1 friend, another girl, was gonna wear beige. Of course, I went to tell my fiancé, and he said what a fucking asshat, and nipped that in the bud immediately. He straight up told them it was super rude, and that if they showed up wearing white/beige/cream/ivory/bone/super light pastels/very light gray/any other overly complicated way of saying white, they would not be let in. Daisy complained that it was just a white blouse, I'll wear peach pants, and he told her no white at all, of any shade, anywhere. You're being rude to even consider it. The dress code is wear whatever you want except white, you can show up in flip-flops if you want. Why would you want to wear the one thing that's not allowed? She pouted, said her +1 was sad, because she only looks good in light beige, but alright. He considered uninviting her, but I told him not to do it, or it could cause drama with the rest of the friend group, that will make sure the guard at the gate won't let her in if she's wearing anything too light, and my friends all volunteered to shower her in red wine if she dares. I'm also overall a very chill person, if she actually showed up wearing white, I'd laugh my ass off, she'd be shaming herself in public. Anyways, I went back to placing the cupcake order, and just asked for all chocolate cupcakes. I guess it just slipped my mind to order a caramel one. Ah, well. Who doesn't love chocolate, anyway? I was written up for abandoning post, by user Clayth13. To clarify my title, I am not in the military. This takes place when I was 20, working summer jobs while living with my parents to pay for college. I was already working full-time as a waiter at a very fun restaurant that I really enjoyed, but I wanted to make a little extra money, so I got a job as a host at another restaurant, let's call it Sapphire Wednesdays. I knew immediately that the place was mismanaged, mostly cued in by the manager having a beer at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday during my interview, but my responsibilities as a host were very easy: seat customers, inform servers, sweep the floor near the front. I had already been working in restaurants since I was 16, so my training was over in about an hour. About a week after I was hired, sometime after lunch but before dinner rush, there was a car accident in front of the store. A car was sideswiped by a semi and run into a telephone pole on a busy suburban road. I told a server to call 911 and sprinted out and across the parking lot to check on the car. Thankfully, the woman in the car was shaken but fine, the truck driver was out of his truck and on the phone with 911, and other drivers had stopped as well, a very nice moment of humanity from folks on their way home from work. I decided that everything was being handled as best as possible, so I went back into the restaurant. I walked back in to find the manager standing at the empty host stand in front of a nearly empty dining room asking, "Where did you go?" "There was an accident, I went out to make sure everyone was okay." Manager asks, "Why did you feel the need to do that?" "It jackass because I'm a human?" After a brief back and forth, the manager says he has to write me up for abandoning post. I was too confused and angry to argue, so I told him that was fine. He then reminded me that one more write-up within my first month means I'd be fired. I went home and explained all this to my dad, who was laughing through his anger, and suggested I quit and just focus on the other job. I decided he was right, but hatched a plan. Rather than quit, I showed up an hour late to my next shift that the same manager worked. This happened to be Friday night during dinner, and I was the only host scheduled. The manager was furious that he had to get out of the office and do actual work, so when I walked in he saw me and immediately began berating me. I asked if I was going to get written up for this, to which he replied, in front of a crowd of customers, "I might add, you bet your ass you're getting written up." "Oh no, I guess I'm fired then. See ya." I went home and drank whiskey and smoked a cigar with my dad on the back porch to celebrate.